Are you an entrepreneur wanting to grow your influence but getting overwhelmed by the details? Check out the Resilient Events Show, where co-hosts Marisa Cali, head of production at Be Present Events, and John Harris, founder of Buzzit Event Sites, talk strategy, technology, and execution for using podcasts, live streams, and events to establish expertise in any industry. Don't miss Resilient Events, only on 100 TV.
All right, welcome to the Resilient Events Show, exclusively on 100 TV Network. This is our first show, so we're not going to get too much into that it's our first show and that we're having fun, but my name is Marisa Cali. I'm the head of virtual production at Be Present Events, and my co-host is John Harris. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you, John?
Sure. Yeah. I'm founder of Buzzit Event Sites. So I got bit by the event bug way before the pandemic and then fell into the rabbit hole of online events and then hybrid events. And that's how I met Marisa. And the rest is a really, really long story.
Yeah.
So here we are today.
We'll probably get into that story, but yeah. I think myself, in terms of events, I've been planning events, for my friends, for my social groups. There's always some event that I'm involved with planning. So it was a very natural transition into planning virtual events because I was very involved in the marketing space ahead of the pandemic. And it was just a matter of, okay, well, people need to get online, and now they're coming to me and they need to do virtual events. And I already knew how to do all this stuff, being a marketing consultant. So I get to use tools like Buzzit Event Sites, and I've just also formed a friendship and relationship with John, and we had talked about launching this show or launching something, and this came about, and now we're on a network. So we hope that the value that we bring here is going to be, super impactful for you in any industry you're in, but also get some takeaways. So we're excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited. And then I think today's show is going to give like an overview of what the first season of our show is going to look like, right? Mm-hmm. So we'll give kind of brush over some of the details, and then we can get a lot deeper in the next couple episodes. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, it's a show about a show about planning an event, and so it's super meta, like Inception, like and how much planning we've gone into. Just planning our events show has been pretty lots of events on our calendar to do this. So it's kind of interesting. So yeah, I want to get right into it. We're really talking about two main topics here. And why don't I let you kind of overview the two main topics, and then we'll get into the first one. So.
Sure. And so starting, I think Marissa's had this a lot on social media in the past. I've seen starting out with purpose. And then how your purpose kind of converts into your goal. So that's the big first topic that we'll be addressing, right? And then the next one is from your purpose and your goal, deciding on a format that matches your audience,
right?
And those goals at the same time.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to be surprised if we can get through all that in 29 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, those are very big concepts. I think, we were talking about right before we went live, it was, it's kind of known in this space, like you do need to know the purpose, because then we can get to the goals and break those down. But a lot of people that are starting events or trying to do events, they don't think about that goal first. They think about, they want to do an event, and they don't think about all the things that need to be put together in order to get to that goal. And so that's why we're going to try to help guide those things. So my first question is to, if you are thinking of planning an event, what the heck are you doing this for? Why are you doing this? And it's not, it's okay. Yes, we want to sell tickets. That's general, right? But like, what else are we trying to do? So what are some things that people might want to plan an event for?
Right. Well, yeah, the first one you already mentioned, some people might be running the events for money. That is definitely a legitimate reason to run events. But most of the events we've worked with in the past at Buzzet event sites, at least, there's more of the purpose is a lot behind getting a message out to a community,
Mm-hmm.
or building a community around a brand. So we
Right.
work with a lot of people that are running events with the goal of kind of establishing themselves as like a leader in their community, whether
Mm-hmm.
that's in person or online, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's
And another thing is, I've worked a few virtual galas, and um, I think almost all business wants to be national or global. They want their brand to reach, different countries, and they want to impact all these people. But in order to get everyone into one place, regardless of pandemic, they didn't understand how to be able to deliver that message. And so there are
right.
ways to do this in a virtual sense, or and you're celebrating the accolades of the people in this case, it was a nonprofit that benefited a specific audience. And so, how can you get that information out without flying in 2,000 people and spending all this money to, put on an event and, still make it worthwhile? So, it doesn't always need to be, okay, we're setting up this and we're spending money, we're doing it properly to make money. I mean, obviously that's the goal, but sometimes it's a celebration. I mean,
Right.
there's a lot of different examples I'm sure that you can give in that sense.
Definitely, yeah. So one that we've worked with in the past is like graduations from startup accelerators.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously the accelerator is built to make money off startups over the long run. But in the for just that event, the real goal is to get as many people enthusiastic about the startup accelerator as possible, right? And so
Yeah.
kind of leads. It's on the way to profit, but the event in
Mm-hmm.
itself, the goal is totally different, right?
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people are like, well, I can just do that without going on Buzzit and putting the content on there. But you think, I just saw today a newsletter from Julian Solaris, which if he ever watches this, hopefully he'll be able to see our shout out. We're super fans of him. Thank you, John, for introducing me to him. But people create events to generate content, not just for that event, but throughout the rest of the year. So those people that did
Absolutely.
that startup accelerator, they have a pitch of their company on video that they can use over and over again, like
Absolutely,
each
yeah.
month, and if it's not done professionally or with the thought that it can be used over and over again, then you're just wasting your time, in my
Yeah,
opinion. So
totally. Or just not making the most of it. Like, let's face it,
mhm,
it costs money to run these
yeah.
events. And if you know what you can do with that content afterwards, and then you can set yourself up in the right way, then
Mhm.
you're ready to really earn a lot more off your investment than you
Right.
otherwise would, right?
Right, exactly. So there's, a lot of knowledge between the two of us and a lot of experience in the different types of events. And I've been really amazed with a lot of companies who are thinking outside the box in terms of innovating in that sense, and not just saying, hey, we're back going to events in person. We don't need to think about the long-term goals. Like what's the purpose of this?
Right.
Um, I mean, there's people I have a client right now that's actually thinking about doing a hybrid event for next year in March. And it's like, okay, well, that's 4 years removed from when the pandemic starts. So it's not something that, in my opinion, is going away. So it's always good to see that. And I get encouraged by that stuff. So,
Yeah, absolutely. One final topic we didn't touch for like why are people doing this events? A lot of what we see is raising money for charity as
mm-hmm,
well. And so that could
mm-hmm,
look completely different than just a celebration, right? If you're raising money for charity, one of the key considerations, how are you going to make it easy for people to give you money during the event,
right.
right?
Yeah.
So there's
Mm-hmm.
all these little considerations that come in. But
Yes.
so I think once you've got the reason, the overall purpose why you're doing this, the next
Mm-hmm.
thing is like setting specific goals that you're
Right.
working towards, right?
Right. And you can have many of those goals, because depending on the second part, which we're going to talk about, the format and how that aligns with your audience, you can have multiple goals and they can all really be accomplished depending on how you integrate that into your event strategy. I mean, there's event planners, event strategists, event marketers, there's event project managers. I mean, there's so many different roles in that sense. And I think sometimes it's good to know like who you need and where you need them. But one of the goals that I see a lot is making sure that there's some capture of an email,
Right.
whether it is registration, and make it the simplest registration as possible. Whether they show up or not, hey, we have their email and we
Right.
can put that event in, drop it in their email box year round,
It
I
happens,
think.
especially with live streaming only, right?
Mm-hmm.
People will start promoting their YouTube link. If that link gets shared, maybe you get a ton of people to watch, but if you don't know who those people were, it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like a bunch of people drove by your billboard. It's like somebody saw it,
Right.
but who
Right.
was that?
Like we said, a lot of people, their goal is to raise money. So the defined ticket sales, what are we doing? Early bird sales, are we doing free in the beginning? Is it free after it's live? Like, or do you have to pay free if you pre-register and then paid after? I mean, there's a lot of different models, and that would all factor into the original purpose and how you want to, from an audience perspective, how easy is it for them to do this without, how can I show up? And how easy is it for me as someone to watch that? If I have to go through hoops to watch it, I probably won't do it. I can turn on my TV and watch something. Do I have to
Yeah,
go through all these hoops to do the other thing, to watch something on my computer?
for sure. And then, yeah, some other goals that people might be looking for if they're running these events consistently over time. And one that is, I think, good to add in as like a secondary goal to all events is having a high net promoter score or like post event survey results. So
Mm-hmm.
essentially, so that you can track whether what you're doing during your events is making people think that they're going to come back to the next one, or that they'll share it with their friends, or they'll
Right.
promote it themselves, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point, because, sometimes people plan events and then they don't think about what went well, what could change, and what can we eliminate? And those are standard things in all projects, from marketing campaigns to rollouts of products. If you're not doing that, how can you grow, and how can you improve on that? And then two, you don't even care about the people you're trying to reach. It's also proven to be beneficial for, one, for me to improve, but now I have some marketing copy that I can use that's straight from the customer's mouth.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
you got to think about all of that stuff when you're planning.
Very beneficial. Yeah.
Hmm.
One key thing we want to put here, we're putting a lot of weight on everybody's shoulders. If they were like thinking events were going to be easy at this point, the most important thing is to not just be a planner, is to also be a doer.
Yes.
So like you got to consider these things, but then have a timeline, make a
Hmm.
decision, and just start going. And then, yeah, if you're just track your results and just
Hmm.
try to be better the next time. So just
Right.
don't let perfection get in the way of getting started, right?
Oh yeah.
Because you'll never get there. That's
Yeah.
And we were guilty of that. And thank you to the 100 TV network for setting a
Yes.
deadline so that we actually had to get this first show out on time. Otherwise,
Right. By the time you see it, maybe a few weeks old, but it's just, you're right about doing, because I think as a natural planner, I'm not in the conceptual side and I'm not in the doer side. I'm kind of in between. So I
yeah,
can like do both things, but then I'm like, but getting to the doer, I need someone else to either say, all right, let's schedule a meeting to do this. What we just covered was, making sure you understand the purpose and what the purpose is and how that relates to your goals, because it can change, but I think starting out when you're planning an event, that's needed. And us as event pros, we're going to always ask that. Those are our
right.
first questions asked. But a lot of people who are not in this industry don't do that first. They think about the
Right.
format or how many
Yeah. I
speakers
want
am
to
I
do a
going to
live
have? And you're
stream.
like,
Why?
no, no, no. Don't think about the speakers yet.
Yeah,
Let's figure out, because then you can align everything with that. So yeah, the
exactly.
second point. What's
Format.
the second point? Go ahead.
Second point, yeah, format, audience match. So once you have your overall purpose, you can define some goals, and then you need to start making decisions. That's why you have those goals, so you can make decisions more easily, right?
Yes.
And then so it's matching the format of the event to your audience.
Right. Right. I mean, it makes sense. But I think what we're trying to do here is to speak to a wider audience that may want to, navigate into any type of event. I mean, one meeting could be an event. Multiple meetings are events. You still have to have some structure. So tell me what would be the first considerations when thinking about the event, when determining your format for your event.
Right. Well, we've already got the why. And so I think the next steps are the where, the who, and the when. Right. So where is your audience? We just had that example of the charity in New York. Who is your audience? So what format do they prefer? What technology are they comfortable with? Right. And when is your audience available? So for us right now with this podcast, live show, the when is kind of anytime. Like this is going to be valuable to people, ideally when we record it, when it goes live, and then into the future as well. It'll be a starting point for a ton of people. And so that's why having a live show on 100 TV is a great fit for this episode, right? Because it'll be persistently available to all kinds of people across the world.
Right. Exactly. Where, who, when, why.
Yeah. Right.
And that can it can all change. I think it's getting some type of framework to then start, getting into, what type of format it is. And that, this is where, the Buzz It sites or, if it's just a strict live stream that I've done on a lot of them, how that factors in. So are we doing a virtual versus in-person only event? Are we doing a mix of both? Is it both running succinctly or like at the same time? Because then it's two different events, in my opinion, because you can't have an MC in person and an MC on virtual unless you have a camera attached to their head and it's all, it just concepts that it just logistically doesn't work well because people in person will wonder why this person's talking to a computer the whole time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think, only in person is great. But you can't start then thinking, hey, let's live stream it and not consider how that live stream will look.
It can't be added in at the last moment. That's for sure.
Yeah. I have, I've seen a few live events live streamed, and to me, it's not a virtual event. It's not even a live stream. It's literally a video feed of a live event.
Yeah.
And that's very specific. And not to talk down on those people, but it's always an afterthought, let's go live with it because we can, but they don't think about the experience for someone that might want to sit there. And, honestly, like our show is 29 minutes. We want it to be, I think it's going to be tough for us long-winded people, but we want it. We know that, like, I know my behaviors. I can't sit longer than 29 minutes sometimes when we're talking about a concept. So you have to think about that. Yes, I can sit for a movie, but like, you know what I mean? Like
Movies are good.
It's tons of value in such a short time. You watch a sitcom, even like Ted Lasso's 40 minutes, and that's like quick, right? We're not sitting there for an hour and a half.
Let's be honest, there's hundreds of people working on that and editing it for days, weeks, months.
Millions of dollars. Yeah.
Millions of dollars. And for most of the people we work with, $1 million events are out of the budget, right?
Yeah, no. Yeah.
That said, we don't want to discourage anybody from getting events out there. The nice thing is, like, although you are sometimes, if you're running a live stream, you're in some ways competing with Netflix or whatever is out there, right? But what you do have is something that Netflix can never have. and that's extremely targeted content, right? So you could be, if you're talking to people in that are supporting charities in New York City, that's already a small target audience. And then a specific type of charity, that's even better. And then you give them also the opportunity, if you go level up your live stream to make it interactive, or use an online event site like Buzzit, then you can actually make it so that there's some connection there. There's some camaraderie that people aren't going to be able to find just by browsing through Netflix, right? So event creators really do have an advantage in terms of how niche they can be with their content, right?
And the event creator also has the locale of where they are. Like, you're in Canada, I'm in Tennessee, and we're creating this together, and they have, like, there's not really like a barrier that I have to go through to get this, for us to get it out, right? It's like, oh, we're creating this, and you can essentially do that. Any business really can, and allow people to access you, and your content or your message or whatever it is, online. And we don't have that in the network side. you know maybe
Right.
100 TV eventually, but you know what I mean? It's just the access of allowing us to create, is exponential now, and I think that needs to be considered. What
Totally.
So I'm mostly doing virtual events and not a lot of um hybrid events like you may have been involved with.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that it's clear that when we talk about virtual events, or when I talk about virtual events, it's different types of virtual events, and virtual content. So to me, a virtual event could be a podcast, which
Yeah.
is what this originally was going to be. We were going to not do video. And John kind of pushed me to do video, and the 100 TV thing came about, which I'm okay with. And also, going live. And this is, when it comes to branding, it could be we created this overlay, so it says the name of our show, and we kind of talked a little bit about how we want it to look, but that can also evolve. It does represent the brand. It will come across like that. You don't want it to look like you're just putting your Zoom on
There you go.
online, right?
Leveling
So
it up a little bit. Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
And what are some other way that you
Yeah,
think?
so yeah, we are starting off with the idea of a podcast. It ended up turning into a recorded live show, which I'm super excited about. And then there's other things you consider are webinars,
Mm-hmm.
and online events, and so we can kind of talk about the differences between those couple.
Mm-hmm.
So podcast, it's like everybody's very familiar with podcasts at this point.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
all have a podcast app built into our iPhones, our Androids, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's the beautiful thing is they easily live forever. People can consume them on the go, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so it's pretty clear the formatting. A live stream or a live show is like kind of like one level up from there.
Right.
Awesome thing that we're doing this on StreamYard. It actually makes it incredibly easy to
Mm-hmm.
record a live show like this. But then, so right now, this episode is not live, but when we start going live with these, we're going to be able to have live interaction between us and our attendees, and
Right.
that's going to be so much fun.
Yeah.
But so at
I
the same, sorry, go ahead.
So no, like you're right. In terms of a podcast, we have a goal, we have a structure, what our run of show is,
Yeah,
but there's not a lot of focus on getting interaction from one
that's right.
person.
Everybody kind
It's
of
just
consumes it on their own,
literally,
right?
yeah, just
So
listen to
live,
us talk.
that's one of the coolest thing about a live stream is that like it can
hmm
kind of be like a podcast that everybody consumes together. And so it's
hmm
almost starting to border on an event, right?
Right. hmm
And then one thing about a live stream like this, we can kind of cut it and then turn it into a podcast to publish later, right? So
hmm
if you're
hmm
willing to go for a live stream, you get that added interaction level, and then
Right.
you can still quite simply convert that into also having a podcast, which is why, from like an efficiency standpoint for like content creation, I'm so excited about doing this like the way we
Yes.
are.
Yeah. And then webinar, we have a little bit left. I want to like talk about this really quickly. Webinar, usually is to a defined audience. You have a built-in audience, or you have a target audience specifically. There's not a lot of focus on the general audience, but you are building engagement things into your webinar so that you can
Right.
either, or there's two different webinars. I think there's a training webinar where you just listen and there's no engagement. And then you have a webinar where you're expecting people to be present there for your event,
Yeah.
for your webinar, and interact. And then your content kind of forms based on, like, answer 1 through 4. What is your top, answer there? And then they
Right.
form their webinar through that. And that can
Yeah.
all be live too,
And so webinars can be great. I think like webinars, people mostly do those on Zoom, or maybe what's the other one? I can't remember, made by Cisco. It's
GoToMeeting,
yeah, there's GoToMeeting. There's a couple others,
Teams.
right?
Yeah.
And Teams. People, the thing about webinars is show up rates are relatively low because people do things like that for work all the time.
Right.
And they're often not accessible. They're not accessible later. They're not accessible on mobile devices. So it's like you really kind of restrict your access. They
Right.
can be really great for like if you have a very clear target lead group and you want them to show up and get interact with you directly as the content creator. And for you to kind of push them through your funnel. They can be really valuable for that, for sure, but they're not exactly like an event. They're kind of like almost like more salesy or more kind of workish, right?
Right.
And then so online event, I would put it like one level above a webinar. And so the real difference, I think, between an online event and a webinars are almost always one to many. So it's like me talking to my potential customers and then them talking back to me. Whereas an online event, I think the definition is when those customers or those attendees, whatever they might be, get to interact with each other. And so you get that feeling like you get after you go to a football game or any sports game where you're in the stadium and you're enjoying the event and like
Collectively.
you get that exactly. You get that camaraderie of knowing that you're consuming something exciting with all those people at the same time. And then that's why when you walk out of an event like that, you can it's like you're everybody's best friend. It's like there's 10,000 of your best friends on the street and everybody's lived through that experience. And so that really just brings up everybody's level and mood, right?
Yeah. And I think, that's a good point, because I've watched a few live webinars, so to say, whatever you want to call them. But there wasn't a chat option. And I was really, really disappointed, because I'm like, if I'm going to spend my time 40 minutes watching you talk about a concept about in the industry or whatever, some learning, can I at least interact with the others that are there and kind of like bounce ideas or network? That's what we would do in person. So why is that not something available in a virtual sense? And actually, I think I even wrote to them like as a survey. They did the survey, which is great. But I was also like, well, what was the point of that? So you could showcase your product and then hope that I actually buy into your product. But what about if I want to network with people in the industry? I couldn't.
Exactly. Yeah.
So.
And so I know it doesn't work perfectly for every product out there. Some people, they run webinars with no chats because they're worried that people are going to other salespeople are going to shark their kind of steal their clients, right? So that's a fair, if that's what you think your business is like, then that's fair.
Yeah.
Where I think the reason I got into events is because I loved going to events and having that camaraderie and talking with people. And so that's why I really like online events the most, and why I hope that we can do them together eventually as we build an audience with this show.
We could go on and on about events, but that kind of gives you an overview of what Resilient Events will talk about. We're going to go really granular and be very focused on all the aspects of events, different skills that you might need, different tools that you might want to use. So this is just an intro to Resilient Events, and you can catch us every Monday on 100 TV Network, and we will see you next time.
Okay, till next time. Bye.
Bye.